Hello, this is Randy with Excel for Freelancers, and thank you for joining me for part 18 of the Employee Manager, where we're going to cover a dashboard, including an earnings statement, which is going to be a dynamic based on the payroll, based on the particular employee, and we're going to be able to create all of these earnings statements within just one click for an entire payroll simply by clicking the print payroll, which is going to print them all at one single click. So I've got a lot to show you, so let's get started. All right, I'm so happy you joined me for this training. It's going to be one of the better ones because we're going to go over an amazing report called the earnings statement, and we're going to go over a template on how to create a single click dashboard so we have multiple reports and we'll be able to click, and that is very similar to our dashboard course. So this is going to give you a little bit of free insight into what a dashboard could look like, and all this report is going to be able to be created directly from the payroll by printing pay stubs, as we went over last week, and now we've got it functioning. So if we have 3 employees to pay, we'll just click print pay stubs, and yes, we want to go ahead and all of the pay stubs for all the employees will be printed automatically based on the default printer. And my default printer is Snagit, so that's the application that's going to be run. But as you can see there, all these statements are being created automatically one by one. So it's a great little feature, and I can't wait to show it to you. And it is this particular, and here's the print statements right here. It is this feature and this template that allows us to create multiple reports as we list our reports, and it gives us the single click functionality. So when we click on it, our report refreshes automatically. And the same thing when we change the payroll. Also, we get a refresh, and of course when we change the employee, we automatically get a refreshed earnings statement. And this particular template can be used for hours, it can be used for events, it can be used for things. We also have pay period. Now pay period is different than payroll because payroll is for existing payrolls that have been created, while pay periods could be for any pay period even without payroll being created. For example, you may have hours worked per pay period but no payroll created. So we have both of those drop down lists. Although the pay period's not working, we just have the earnings statement right now. So we're going to go over that. I've got a lot to show you. And if you really like the idea of this, I want you to make sure you check out our dashboard course, because our dashboard course is very similar, but a lot more features. And if you take a look, this is the reports and graphs dashboard from our masterclass, where I'm going to teach you the ability to create dynamic reports on single click, including a profit and loss, where we have drill down, which is really amazing. We also have outstanding invoices, where you're going to learn how to create a dynamic pop-up picture with dynamic content in there. And of course, based on any type of a date range. So you'll learn that in the dashboard masterclass. Of course, you'll also have the ability to use single click column sorting, inter, partial, or exact match to do a filters. We also have the ability to toggle columns. If you don't want to see certain columns, you'll just unselect those. So it's an amazing, you'll learn more features in this one dashboard course than you would in any other course possible. We also have custom reports seen anywhere else. You can have the ability to customize your own reports, of course, customize your own dates, columns. So there's a great feature. Of course, we also have in this dashboard course the ability to save as, of course, save as a picture, Excel, PDF, or custom report on a single click dropdown. And of course, email as Excel, PDF attached, and simply a click is going to create that email automatically and launch an email. Just like that. So there's a great many features in that dashboard course. I wanted to give you a little peek into that. And for this particular training that we're going to focus on today is going to be a little bit of a light area on that. So we're going to cover a little bit of that. So I'm really excited to show that to you. So let's get started on that. In fact, for the reports dashboard, all of this earnings statement is based on a payroll. And that payroll we went over last week, but there's a few things I wanted to cover. We didn't quite get everything covered in. So let's go ahead and review and cover a few things. In fact, one of them is this summary and create. And we'll take a look at this one. And let's go ahead and review just for the past week and how payroll gets created and how we go about focus on that. All right, so to create a new payroll, we're starting in payroll details here, and what we'll do is we'll select a specific pay period, and let's just keep it on this one, and then that's going to set our from and to dates. Here we can of course customize that with our calendar, or we have the ability to keep, and of course we can add its selected people just like that. So when we add, and then of course once we have our employees, and we can filter employees by of course position, by status, by pay type, right, if we only want to, or of course by frequency, and then we add those employees to this, and then when we have that, we go to step 2. And step 2 is the place where we review our employees. So we go through each one and we take a look at the clocked in time. Of course, we have the ability to edit it just by clicking on the edit pop-up. We can edit those times. If we want to increase them or decrease them, we can, and we click OK. So that we have the ability to do that as well. And we also have the ability to update our federal, other payroll deductions. We have other tax, and of course we also have sick and paid. If we want to add sick or paid, we get the ability to do that as well. Let's go ahead and hide these columns. We don't need them right now. So we have that ability, and once we go through, we'll just click save and next, and what that does is it saves the information. We also have the ability to do federal employment taxes. We'll be updating that. We have for salary or hourly employees. That's going to come up, and then what we'll do is we'll go through each employee and review it, and once we've done that, we'll move on to the third step, and that's called summary and create. So when we click this button here, or we click the summary and create, either one is the same function, we get to move to the next step, and that's going to allow us to review just in case. We have all the employees, we have their gross earnings, deductions, other deductions, tax deductions and other deductions, additions as well as net pay, and a summary here according with the payroll, and the status, which is pending confirmation. So the next step we would do is just click confirm and create. What that's going to do is replace the button. It's going to change the buttons up here, and now we're ready. Now our payroll status has been confirmed, and we're ready to print the payroll stubs. And now what we do is we have some totals here, and I want to show you some of the formulas that go into these totals. For example, let's take a look at gross earnings. Now, all of this information, if you'll remember, it's based on our data in the employee payroll item list. So that means every time we create a payroll item, and that includes a regular pay, overtime pay, or salary pay, they're going to be kept in here. And it's important. We have to know the payroll ID. That's the specific payroll. We have to know the employee ID. That's critical. We have to know the item type. What type of an item is it? And of course, we have to know the item name. For our pay, it's going to be the same, but for additions, it would be different. We want to know the amount and if there's any hours that are applied to it. For example, regular pay has hours, but of course, salary doesn't. And then I also want to know the pay date, the pay year, which is going to come in handy when we use year to date. The payroll row, if it's associated within a table, we need to know that. The row, that's the row that appears on the table. Let's take a look at that. That would be the row that it appeared here, 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 or here. I need to know the row here. So if it's other payroll additions, I need to know what row. So that's important for these items here in any table on the payroll. So that's why we have that. And of course, we need to know the original database row, which is this database, and we use that with a formula called row. So that's done. And so what we do is, what I want to do is I want to base totals based on this. So if I want to total, I want to know how much employee number 1220, how much overtime they made. I would determine what the payroll is. I would determine their ID. I would look for anything that is overtime or pay, and then I would add it. But in this case, let's take a look at this. In this case, on our, let's pull up the payroll. On our summary, what I want to do is I want to know gross earnings, and that's irrespective of the type of pay. So that I want this to include salary pay. I want this to include overtime pay, and I want it to include hourly pay. So those three, I'm looking for actually 3 different items in our payroll list. Let's go over those items. Overtime pay, regular pay actually is regular pay, overtime pay, and salary pay. So I want to total those 3 items. Now, what's a good way to total 3 different items? But I don't want to total anything else. I don't want to total additions. But if we look, every single one of those includes the word pay. It ends with the word pay. Regular ends with the word pay, overtime pay ends with pay, and salary pay, they all end with the word pay. So we can use that. Now that we've found a common denominator among all those, we can use that. So let's go ahead and use that right now. When we look back in our formula, let's go ahead and take a look back in the formula here into the payroll. And we'll see, let's take a look at the formula. We're going to sum. What are we summing? Our payroll item amounts. That's a dedicated list for payroll item amount. You want to look at that? Let me go ahead and show that to you just so you can see what that list is. When we go into formulas, name manager, click pay, and then we're going to look at payroll item all the way down here under payroll amounts. So we have payroll amount here, and we're going to tab over to that, and we're going to see that that is the amount of the list I just showed you. That's covered. It's a dynamic range using count A and offset to encompass the entire amount list. So that's going to cover all of that because that's what we're going to use to total. So that's very important. We need that payroll item amount. That's the sum range. And when we use sum ifs, there's multiple conditions. So the first thing we want to do is the sum range. What are we totaling? What is the total? And then what is the criteria, the ranges of criteria? In other words, we only want to sum the certain conditions. This here is one condition. This is another condition, and this is a third condition. So there's 3 different conditions in which I want to sum it. Okay, the first one is payroll item employee ID, and that's going to be BC10. So that's 1063 in this case. I only want a total if it is in the amount list, if it's going to be the payroll item employee ID, and this particular list is the same thing. Let that list right here is the employee ID. So we have employee ID, we have item name, we have amount, okay, and we have payroll ID. So we're going to be using all of those. So back into it. Payroll item employee ID is going to have to be BC10. What is the other conditions? The payroll ID, and that's going to be B2. So let's go ahead and take a look at that. Let's find out where B2 is. We can unhide those columns there, and then we'll just unhide it. We'll take a look in B2, scroll all the way over to the left, and we'll see that B2 is the payroll ID. B2 is the payroll ID. So that is what we're going to be noticing, okay? So that's what we need to do on this specific payroll. All right, let's go back into our formulas, and let's go ahead and reset this so we're looking at a nice clean screen. Okay, so back in here, so we know B2 is the payroll ID, and what is the third condition? The payroll item types, those are the types, must end with pay. When we can use this star here, this is a wild card. That means any characters before that are fine, but it must end in pay. And this is how we can use sum if on 3 different types because they all end in pay. So that's how we're able to use sum if on 3 different types of pay. So I wanted to show you that. The rest are pretty straightforward. In this, well, of course, for deductions, we're going to do this. We're going to, of course, sum the payroll item amount again. The payroll item must be BC10. Of course, BC10 is the payroll employee ID. Actually, the payroll ID, of course, is going to be B2. That's for this specific payroll, only for this payroll. And of course, the payroll item type is going to be tax item. In this case, we have one specific item type, and that's going to be tax item. So we've done that. The same thing for deductions, additions, and net pay. So we've been able to summarize all that using the sum ifs. So that's a great way to do that. And in fact, I've also indexed the employee names. Employee names change, employee IDs don't. So I'm using a formula here to index because I really want to focus on employee IDs. Employee names can tend to change. So I always, especially when something as important as payroll, if an employee changes their name, let's say 2 days ago, I want that name reflected on their payroll. So I want to make sure that we're going to index that list. The employee list must be indexed. So we're going to index the employee name. We're going to match it with B9. We're matching the employee ID using index match to pull up the employee name from the records because I don't want to. So even though oftentimes we do save employee names in certain lists, we always want to use the ID as our anchor because that's really important. So we always want to try to use that because employee names can change very easily. All right, so now we've gone over that, and that's pretty much it. That's all we do. All I'm doing here is basically taking these once they're reviewed, and I'm going to bring them over to here, and then I'm just going to keep these formulas the same. And what I'll do is I'll copy this formula. We'll take a look at that real quickly because there's a lot I want to show you. But basically, all I'm going to do is copy these formulas down because I only want to copy them. I don't want to create formulas here if there's no data here. I want to create a lean and fast application. I don't want formulas where they're not needed. So in this case, we have 4 employees. We only have 4 rows with formulas. Let's go ahead and take a look at how we did that, just so we can see into the developers, into the Visual Basic. Alt F11 will get you there. So let's go ahead and take a look at that. We have here under Payroll Summary, we're going to look at a module called Payroll Summary here. We'll open that up. In fact, let me increase the font. All right, this font's too small, so let's go ahead and take a look at that. Options, I want to increase the font. I just updated this Excel, so I want to make sure the increase the font is nice and big for you here. Okay, let's go ahead and take a look at that. There we go. That's nice. You can read that code. Okay, so now we have this font here that's larger. So here we have Payroll Confirm and Create, and we also have Payroll Load Summary. Now the Confirm and Create is what we did. That was the last step, so we'll go over that once more. But the Load Summary is what we did, and all we did here is we determined the payroll row. I need to know the payroll row, and that's in B3, right? B2 is our payroll, so B3 is our payroll row. That's just, let's go ahead and take a quick look at that just so we know where we're going here. Payroll row here, it's using a match based on B2, the payroll. So all we're doing is pulling up the row based on the payroll ID there. So we need to know that. Also, let's take a look in BD6. BD6 value equals C. What is this? The payroll date. I want to bring the payroll. I want to take all the information from this payroll in the payroll list. Sheet 18 is our payroll list, right? Let's take a look here. Sheet 18 is our payroll list. So what I want to do is I want to bring the information. I want to get the payroll date, the date of the payroll, from and to in the status. I want to bring all that information over. Right, so let's take a look. When I go from review employee to the next, I want to bring information. I want to bring the status. I want to bring the payroll, and I want to make sure that the from and to dates here are updated and the payroll date. So this information all comes from the review. In case the user wants to be able to change it, they can change the payroll date before they click Summary and Create. So we can do that, and it's pulling it from our payroll list, which is here. Here's our list of payroll. It's a very simple table. We have our payroll ID, which is critical. Okay, that's very important. We have our payroll range, that's the date range. We have the date, that's the date that you'll send the payroll out or print the payroll, or you create your payroll for your employees. And of course, the from and the to is the dates. And of course, we have a status, right? This particular payroll is pending confirmation. So when we have a payroll, we want to look up previous payrolls. All we need to do is select a specific payroll, and it's going to load that information from that previous payroll, just like that. And it's going to load the status. I think one of those payrolls was not confirmed. I don't remember which one now. But we have multiple payrolls, so we can load the specific payroll, and we can view the information from any previous payroll just by selecting the payroll. It's a lot to show you. I don't know if we're going to get to everything to show you, but you, of course, please download it, and I'll include the links in the description. Right next to where you can view the dashboard course, and I'll put some promotions on there. Right now we've got an 80 workbook bonus there, so that means you'll get 80 of my best workbooks when you enroll in the course, so make sure you check that out. That should keep alive for a few more days. I'm going to try. All right, so next up, so we bring this information in, so I need to bring the payroll, the status when we change the payroll, so that's important. And next up, what I want to do is I want to clear any previous payroll data, and that includes BC9 and BC10 through BI500. Let's take a look at that. That's BC9. I want to clear all this out, 9, but I don't want to clear this out. Why don't I want to clear this? This is where my formulas are. I want to keep one row of formulas so I can copy them down. So I'm going to start my clearing from right here, from BD10 and all the way down. I'm going to clear everything else, but I'm going to keep this row of formulas, keeping this, because if the employee ID changed, everything else changed, right? So everything else changes automatically just based on that employee ID. So I want to make sure to keep at least one row, because then I can copy down that row of formulas, but I only need to copy it down for as many of the employees as possible. And anything left, we don't want to create more formulas than we need to. So we've cleared that out, but we've left, remember, we've left BD, we've left this row in. These are all formulas. We're going to keep that so we can copy them down. So that's the important thing that we're focused on there. So we've cleared that. We're going to create any previous advanced filters. Now I need to run an advanced filter on sheet 20. What is sheet 20? Well, sheet 20 is the employees, the employee list. We went over that last time. Those are all the employees on all the payrolls. So let's take a look at that. In the employee payroll list, of course, that's a list of payroll IDs, employee IDs. We don't need the employee name because it's not really important in this particular database because we're bringing it in, and then we're going to pull up whatever the most accurate employee name is, and that's important. So the employee ID is critical. We want to pull up the status, make sure that they've been reviewed, the payroll row and the table row. We did go over that, but what I want to do is I want to run an advanced filter. I want to take the criteria, which is the payroll, the specific payroll. We're focused on payroll 2 now, payroll 2, right? So what I want to do, if this is number 2, payroll number 2, this is 1, this is 2, right? What I want to do is I'm going to take that payroll number, which of course is in B2, and I want to place it right in our payroll employee list. I want to place it right here as the criteria. Because what I'm going to do then is I'm going to run a filter on all of these, and I'm only going to return the employee IDs for this specific payroll. I only want it. So for example, it's only going to be right, if you look right here, it's only going to be these right here, right? I only want to return these specific right here. I really only want the employee IDs. I don't want anything else. I don't need anything else. So I'm going to run that advanced filter, put in the criteria here, and I'm going to run our unique list of employee IDs, and then I'm going to take this list and I'm going to bring it right into our payroll right here. And I'm going to place it right here. Then what I'm going to do is I'm going to determine how many rows, how many lines, and then I'm going to take this formula and I'm going to copy it down that many lines. And that's all we have to do. It's relatively simple. So let's go ahead and walk through it right now. So the first thing before we run in any advanced filters, we want to clear any previous filters. So sheet 20, we're going to clear the contents of any filter, any results that may have been done. And we're going to place sheet 20 L3 to B2. That is the payroll ID. Remember, I just showed you that. That's an L3. We're going to place that payroll ID right there for our criteria. Right there, right here in the payroll, right here. L3. That is where the payroll ID is going to go. And when we run our advanced filter, it's going to let us return just the values for that specific payroll. All right, so we've got that. We've got the payroll ID criteria. And now we have the ability. So now what we do is I want to set the last employee row. I want to run through all of the payrolls. So we need to get the last row. So we're going to use column A. That's our main database. I want to know the last row of that database. And that's going to tell us our last employee row because we need to know that last employee row in order to run an advanced filter. And just in case there's no data, if the last employee row is less than 3, then we can skip all this if there's no data. Assuming there is data, we can run our advanced filter. Sheet 20, of course, that's our employee payroll list. A2 is our main data. 2 must include the headers. Row 2 must include the headers. And then we're going to go all the way to E in the last employee row. We're going to cover the entire data, and we're going to use an advanced filter. We want that information copied over to a new area. What is the criteria? It's just 2 cells, including the header of L2 and L3. That is our payroll ID. And of course, we're going to copy it to the range. We only want to copy it to N2. Why just N2? Because all we are concerned about is right here, just the employee IDs. So we're going to use this as our criteria, L2 through L3. And then, of course, we want our results to go right here, employee ID. I don't really care about anything else, just the employee IDs. So we're going to run our advanced filter. It's going to pull all that data right here. All right, so we've got that. We're going to copy that too. And of course, we want unique true. That's going to pull all our data. And of course, our temporary filter row is going to be, all right, I just updated this font. I really didn't like that. Okay, this is a little bit better. Here, just in case you wanted to change your font, of course, we can go into the tools and then the options and then editor format, and then I've changed it to Arial Baltic, something a little bit easier, and then child size 13. So you can change yours in your editor. Sometimes we get to look in. All right, so now we've got that. It's a little bit better now. All right, so let's continue on. We have the last employee filter row and up. Now I need to know the last row. From column N, what is the last filter results of those employee IDs? I need to get that, and we need to run a check to make sure it's not less than 3. If it is, go to node payroll data. But if it's not, what we're going to do is we're going to copy it over using a value to value copy, which is simply this: BC9 through BC in the last employee filter row plus 6 equals sheet 20 and 3 through N in the last employee row. Why do we add 6? Because this starts on row 3, this starts on row 9, so we need to add 6 to compensate for that difference. So we're going to copy over the employee IDs into the payroll, and then of course what I want to do is I want to copy down the formulas. I just described that to you earlier. We're going to take the formula in BD9 through BI9. We're going to take that formula that's in that top row and row 9. We're going to bring that all the way down from, we're going to include BC9 and then go to the last employee filter row plus 6. So that brings all of our formulas down. All right, so now we have that. We're going to cover this print pay stubs in just a moment actually as well. But what I wanted to do is I wanted to go right in. So now I just wanted to cover that so we know how we got that summary in the payroll. So now we know how we get this. Now we know how we get the formulas. We saw the formulas and we know how we get this data in here. All right, so we're ready to go. Now let's move on to the reports. And the basic idea of this type of a dashboard is a single click dashboard. It's extremely powerful because you can run multiple types of reports, graphs, and charts all from a single click feature. In fact, if you've got a whole list of reports, graphs, or charts down here, all you would have to do is click on them and then have them appear in the main section here. The original data is stored somewhere else, so easily clicking on it is not going to hurt it, and deleting it, all we'd have to do is click refresh and it refreshes. In fact, this entire area is cleared out every time it's refreshed and it's stored somewhere else. So that's the beauty of it, yet the user simply just has to look in one location. And we can put in additional headers and filters here that will help us user determine. We've got event type, although that's just something I put in there maybe for the future. But we have the ability to filter by employee so far, and based on the report that's been selected, it'll display the information for that particular employee. Of course, with the payroll, we also have from and to dates here filter, and we have the ability to print the report. And the reason this says print report and not maybe print earning statements is because you can have multiple reports here. In this particular series, I may add one, maybe two reports. I don't know if it's a lot. I may add probably like a hourly, I think a work hours, something like that, or a scheduling, or perhaps in this particular dashboard, I may add something like an employee work hours report or something like that, so that we know the hours that they've worked. That might be kind of helpful. So we may add that, but we've got a lot more to cover in this particular. So the idea is to click on it and have that report. In fact, we've just got one report, but generally we're going to use conditional formatting to single out the specific report. In fact, if we had additionals, let's move over here and see how we use that. Currently we have the selected report as 6, the report row, but if we were to change that to 7, you'll see that conditional formatting is going to use that to show that different. Now let's start out with that and show you how we did that with conditional formatting. So we'll just highlight that and go into Home, Conditional Formatting, and Manage Rules. Let's take a look. It's just one rule, and all I've done with the formula says if B4 equals the row, then color it this way. In fact, it's going to be colored that way in that fade out, and it's pretty simple. In that fade out, all we're going to be doing, in fact, is we're going to be taking the border, and I'm going to remove that right border. We've seen that, we've used that with the tabs throughout this application. We're going to remove that right border by clearing it out. And of course, we're going to give it a fill effect. And generally with this type of fill, what I want to do is I want to match the background. I want to match this background, at least on the one. So in this particular blue, this fade out, this second color is the background color right here. That is the background color. And this we can just use a little bit different color. And then I've used a vertical fade out so that it appears to bleed into the main report. So it gives it that nice effect. So if we take a look here, and you'll see it, if this was a particular report, it would bleed out and look. So when we select it, all we're doing with the code is taking that. Actually, I haven't done that yet, but it'll take that report number and bring it right into here and put that report. Since we only have one report, we're just focused on 6. But basically, as you select it, this will change to whatever row. I should update that. So we'll get to that, but we just have one report, so we're not focused on that too much yet. So that's how we do it. And of course, I think we do add a bold in the font. All right, so let's go ahead and take a look. We also want to know if we're going to be loading the report or not. That's going to help us for the future, so that's going to keep us. We want to know the report number. That's 1. As we go through, we give each report an individual number, and that helps us keep track of it. So for example, if we update a date, we need to know what report to update. So we would use the report number to do that. We also have the selected payroll row. I want to know what row we're focused on. If our report is covered up payroll, I want to know it's report number 3. So we can use that. We're going to match. We're going to use the match, and this particular F3, which is our payroll, and a payroll date range. That is the range we're using, 0 and then +2. Why are we adding 2? Because our payrolls start on row 3. If we look at our payroll list, it starts on row 3. So we need to add 2 to get to the row number. So that's why we've done that there. Next up, we have the selected pay period. We may put a particular pay period in here. Right now, we have not, but I'll put the pay period here. We're going to use this for hours. That's going to come in handy a little bit later on, but that's just a blank space. I also want to know not only do I want to know what employee ID we're focused on here based on a match, an index and match from H4, which is our employee name in our drop-down list. I also want to know what row that employee is on, row 10. That's going to be very, very helpful. In fact, I've given this a named range because we use it throughout formulas in this, and that is going to be called selected employee row. That is the named range I've used. So remember that. You're going to see that in formulas coming up. All right, so that's pretty much it for our hidden so far. So we're going to hide that. Now that we know we understand most of what's going on in our hidden columns, we can focus on the report. And basically the idea of this type of a dashboard structure is to build the reports off site or off the main page. In fact, this time I'm building this report here. Let's zoom out a little bit so we can see I'm building this report between columns AA and AK. And then what we're going to do is we're going to build this report. And once it's completely built based on all the data, we're going to bring it on over into our main sections just using copy and paste. And what that does is it frees up this area so we can run any particular report in this area. So we can do report number 1 here. We can use BA. We can continue to bring in more reports on these sections and then just bring those reports, copy them into the main section when they're run. And the idea behind this particular report is I want to build this. I've got a certain amount of information that's fixed and the rest of it is dynamic. Now this is dynamic, meaning the locations are dynamics. So if we clear this out, I need to bring this information back in here. The reason it's dynamic, what if the user has 6 different earnings? What if they have 10 different taxes? So let's go ahead and take a look. Let's run another person, somebody with some data, and take a look. I believe our first employee has data, which is Lisa. And Lisa has 2 different earnings type, 4 different tax items, 3 different tax items. So you'll see we need a dynamic report that can collapse and expand based on the data in the report. And I'm going to show you how to create this amazing dynamic report with just a little bit of code and some conditional formatting. So I'm really excited to show that to you. So if we take a look back in our original data, you'll see now it's expanded. How did we do that? It's not magic, it's just a little bit of coding. Well, the first way to do it, I'll explain, I'll walk you through it. The idea is this. I'm going to take this first row of data and we're going to clear this out. We can go ahead and press clear. In fact, we can clear it all out because it's all going to get replaced. So the idea is this. I'm going to keep all this fixed. That doesn't move, right? Our first row and our row. This doesn't move. However, when we're finished with all the income types, I'm going to skip a row and then I'm going to take this, I'm going to copy it and I'm going to paste it right here. Then I'm going to add in all of my federal taxes, however many there are. I'm going to take this, our other deductions, and I'm going to paste it right here. Then I'm going to put in all the deductions here, and then I'm going to go with additions and then summing. So I keep taking this ranges and placing them down below whenever we're finished adding our specific items. And then, of course, at the end, I'm going to take this summary here and I'm going to paste it right down here. Now, to make it easier on the code, I've given these some named ranges. So let's take a look at some of those named ranges. If you'll take a look at this particular range here, AG15 through AK17, I've given that a named range called Report Range Federal Tax. And this particular other deductions, I've given this a name of Report Range Other Deductions, Other Additions for this, and of course our report earnings summary. That's going to make it a little bit easier within the code so that we can recognize those ranges directly within the code. So as we add our data, we're going to use it. Now to get all this data, I've got to run an advanced filter. You know I love advanced filters. And we're going to use that same payroll item here, the same payroll item list. In fact, we're going to run it for a particular employee. So for example, right now we're on payroll ID 1 and employee ID 1220. So let's take a look back in the reports and we'll see here, let's unhide these A and B so we can see, right? This is employee 1220, that's employee number 1, and that's the row 4, okay? 1220 and 4, our payroll number 1, employee number 1220. So those are the two important things that we need to bring over. Payroll number 1, payroll is based on this. Employee 1220 is based on this. All right, based on this name. So we know those two factors so that when we run our advanced filter in all of our payroll items, I need two things. I need a payroll ID and I need an employee ID. So once we have those, we can run an advanced filter. And now I can take all of these items. I want to take all of these items. I'm going to loop through this multiple times because I need them in a specific order. So I want to look, because we don't know theoretically, pay could be down here, pay could be here, pay. So I really want to run a loop. I want to look for any regular overtime pay, and I want to put it in a certain section, right in here. Right here. Actually, I'm going to put it right here, right? I want to take all of the earnings and put them right here. I want to take all the federal and put it here. So we need to run multiple loops. So the first loop we'll do is for income items, right? We want to know when we run that loop. So I want to go starting from row 3 and going all the way to the last row. In this case, it's 14. And I'm going to look for regular pay items or perhaps overtime pay items. First, I'm going to look for regular pay because I want regular pay to be listed first. I'm going to go through all this. Then I'm going to go through all this and look for overtime. Then I'm going to look for salary pay. Maybe it's a salary employee. Then once we're finished with that, I'm going to go through this list again. I'm going to look for all the tax items and I'm going to place those. Then I'm going to look for deductions. Then I'm going to look for additions. So we're going to go through these loops and I'm going to show you just how we did that. So let's go into the code and take a look at just how we did that. All right, we'll start out with the report so we can follow along here, and we'll open the VBA, and I've got some more macros here. We've got here some modules within those, and we've got some new ones called reports, clear and print. We've got reports earning statements. So we're going to focus on these two. We don't need this one here. Okay, so we've got these particular ones. Let's focus on reports earning statement. That's the one we want to focus on here. So we're going to take a look at that. And we're going to walk you step by step through this macro. It's a little bit long, but it's just a couple of loops. They're almost always the same. So it's relatively easy, even though it's a long macro. This particular macro is called reports earnings statement. And I need to know the payroll row. That's important. So it's going to define our payroll row. We also need to know the payroll item row. The payroll row is going to keep track of what row we're on, right? We need to move down the row. I need to go from this row down to this row, this row, this row. So I need to know exactly what row we're on every step of the way. So we have it. And also keep in mind, there's formulas here, here, here and here. These formulas. And I can copy down these formulas based on the item here. And again, the same thing here, year to date. These are all formulas that get copied down. I only need them in one row because they can get copied down. So that's important. All right, so we need to know the payroll row. That's going to keep track of what row we're on as we move through the process of building out this report. So that's important. The payroll item row, of course, that's going to keep track of the item we're on. We need to know, of course, which row we're moving down through our loop. So we need to keep track of that several times here. When we go through our payroll item, I need to know what row we're on. We're going to start in row 3 and move to 14. And I also need to know the last payroll item. So we've got to define that too in our code as well. So the last payroll item filter row here is long. And we have the last payroll item row. So those are important. The report row, okay, we've got that. The report, what row in the report. The last report row, we've got to cover the last one. I need to define the report as we move through the report. The payroll ID and the employee ID, both of those are string, as well as the pay type. We're going to be focused on the pay type because I need to know, is it a salary? Is it a deduction, an addition, is it a tax item, and so on and so forth. So we need to know that. And of course, I want to dimension the report as a range because when we copy that, I want to set the range. So we're going to focus on sheet 15. That is our new reports sheet. If you look here, sheet 15 is our reports. So that's what we're going to be focusing on. And we're going to do is I want to make sure there's a few things. I need to make sure that we actually have a payroll ID or we can't run it. We also need an employee ID or we can't run it because both of those things are critical. So of course, if B6, which stores our payroll ID, is empty, we're going to exit the sub. Of course, if employee ID located in B9, if that's empty, we're also going to exit the sub on those cases. Otherwise, as long as there's not empty, we can continue on and run our macro. We're going to run stop calc. That is the macro that basically runs this. If you haven't seen it before, this stop calc does just this. It enables events false, calculation manual, and screen updating false. That allows us our code to run much faster. Of course, before the macro ends, we need to reset it and enable the events, turn the calculation to automatic, and of course the screen updating to true. So you'll see at the end of this macro, all the way down here, we are going to reset the calculation. All right, so let's continue on with our macro. So the first thing I want to do is I want to clear some information on our current reports, on the reports A17, AB17, and AD17. I want to clear this information right away just to make sure that we're clear. And that is just the first row right here in our reports. So I want to clear this row, AB17. I don't want to clear this formula. I want to keep that. I want to keep AC, and I don't want to clear this formula here. So I want to clear AD, which just has numbers, AD 17, and then these two. So these two have to be cleared, their values, not the formats. However, from here down, I can clear all the formats and all the values. Okay, so that's important. So from here down, from A18 all the way down to AE and whatever row below, we can clear everything, including the formats, because we're going to bring those formats from here, so that's fine. So we're going to bring them right, and we're going to put them right in here. All right, so moving along, we're going to, that first line, we're just going to clear the contents. That second line and beyond here, A18 all the way through AE999, we're going to clear includes all the formats, all the text, all the fonts, everything gets cleared. Because we're going to bring it over, we don't need it. We want to make sure it's cleared. In fact, it's very important to clear it because if we're copying over conditional formats, which we are, they will get duplicated and duplicated and duplicated, creating a massive number of conditional formats if we don't use this clear. So that's very important. We want to set the payroll ID. Remember, we spoke of that. We want to set the payroll ID in B6. That's going to be set to pay ID and the employee ID in B9. So we're going to set those variables, as well as the payroll row located in B4. That sets our payroll. We're going to need those a little bit later on. I'm going to set the report number to 1. When we add additional reports, we're going to set these numbers accordingly, 2, 3, 4. We always want to set that, and that's stored in B3. I just showed you that. B2, we're going to set it report. As we load reports, we want to set them to true or false. I like to know whether they're loading or not, and that's going to help us in the future. Maybe not for this specific report in this specific instance, but as a general rule, we want to know when it's loading set to true, and of course, when we're done loading it, we're going to set it back to false right here. B2 set to false at the end. So that helps us moving forward. You'll see me do that quite often in lots of things that I run: filters, reports, loads, forms. We always set something when we know it's loading, so we know. All right, so we've covered that. Now we're going to set B2 to false. And moving on, we also want, now we're going to focus on sheet 19. What is sheet 19? Well, sheet 19 is what we just discussed, our payroll item list. I want to clear any previous filters. So that's very, very important. When we run a brand new advanced filter, we want to clear any previous filters. And that's right here. So we're going to take it starting here, M3, including the criteria. We want to clear that. And all the way down here, and I want to clear all that out just like that. So we're going to use that in a line of code right here. M3 to V99, clear the contents, clear all of it. Then we can set the payroll ID. The payroll ID is going to be M3, is going to be the payroll ID. Of course, the employee ID is going to be M3. Those two are important for our criteria. That's all we need, just those two values for our criteria right here and right here. Once we have that, we can then run our advanced filter based on the last row of our data, and then we can run it right here, and all of our results will appear right here. Results, of course, coming from P2 all the way to V2. So we can do that, and we do need to get the last payroll item row. Of course, that's sheet 19, column A, and 999 end LX. So that's going to get us our last row of all of our payroll items. We need that so we can run our advanced filter. Now we're ready to run our advanced filter just like we did. We're going to start at A2 using the headers of our main data. J is the last column, all the way to the payroll, last item row. We're going to run an advanced filter and copy that. I'm going to have a criteria range. Remember, those M2 and N3, that's both the payroll ID and the employee ID. That's our criteria, including the header. Those headers have to match in row 2. We're going to copy it just as we said, P2 through V2, and we want unique true. That's going to get us all of our data. Next, we just need to make sure that there is some data that's been returned. So the first thing we do is we set the last payroll item filter row using column P. Column P is going to tell us, just using column P, is going to say, okay, what's the last row? Right now we have no data, but if we rerun this report, we'll see that we do have data. Okay, let's go put some data in there. Now we click payroll item. Now we'll see P has some data. So we're going to get that last row, and of course in this case it's 14, but we do need to run a check. If it's less than 3, then exit the sub, or actually if it's less than 3, then skip everything else. So we're going to go through that in the code right now. If the last payroll item row is less than 3, then go to no payroll data. We'll skip all of this and go all the way down to right here. All right, so just in case there's no data, which sometimes there isn't if there's no payroll, that could certainly happen. So we want to cover that. We don't want to continue on if there's no data. Next up, I want to set the initial report row, and that's going to be 17. Our report row, we're going to keep track of it all the way as we move down. But the first row is going to be 17. Why 17? Well, it's going to be our first row of data right here. 17 is going to be our A. This is where we're going to put in our first earning right here. Then we're going to put in either the hours, possibly the rate, which is a formula, and of course the amount and the year to date. I'm basically going to focus on 3 areas. I'm going to put in the earnings, the type or the name in this case, the hours if there are any, but if it's salary it may not be, and the amount. Everything else, the rate and the year to date, will change based on the type. All right, so moving on, now we continue down through our macro. So we've set the initial report row to 17. And now we have to check for salary income items first. First thing I want to do is I want to check for salary items. So let's go ahead there. We're going to run our first loop. We're going to run multiple loops. Here's our first loop right here. For payroll item row 3, that's the first row, to the last one. Now we're going to run through those filter results. Pay type, of course, is going to be P and the payroll item. That's going to set our pay type. So I want to know if it's a salary, do all of the following. If it's not a salary, then go to the next and next. We're checking for any salary employees or any salary items, I should say. So if it is a salary, what I'm going to do is in AA, we want to put the Q. What is the Q? It's the item name. The item name is in Q right here. Q is our item name right here. So overtime, in this case, this employee doesn't have any salary. It's just regular overtime. So our first loop would go through and find nothing. And that's okay too. So our first loop would go through, in this case, would find nothing because there is no salary. So let's continue on. So the hours would go here. The amount, of course, that's important. We put the amount, of course, right in AD, and that comes from R. The amount comes from R right here, column R. So the amount comes right there. All right, moving forward. Now we want to copy the formulas. I want to take AA, remember R through AE, and copy that. A through A and copy it down. And remember, we mentioned that we want to copy those formulas. And when I copy them, I want to copy it. I want to copy it in the current row, and then I want to add one row, and then I want to paste the formats and paste the formulas. Paste the formats and the formulas. So what am I doing here? Let's take a look here. So the first thing is there's data. I want to take AA. I want to take all of this. I want to copy that, and I want to paste it right down here. Paste the formulas, and I want to paste the values. Excuse me, I want to paste the formats, and I want to paste the formula. So I want to paste all that because this formula, and this formula must get copied down for the next item in case there is a next item. All right, so now we've copied the formats and the formulas all the way down. They're both very important. Next up, I want to clear the contents of AA through AB. Why do I want to do that? Well, those are values. Those aren't formulas. So when I copy it down, I don't want whatever values are in here. I don't want these values. I'm only really focused on the formulas here. So I really just want to, in fact, AD as well. So we're going to clear out AA through 18, these cells and this one. Just keeping the formulas. The values get automatically copied, so we want to clear those out. So we do that with the next 2 lines of code. AA through report row AB and AD. So that clears out the values and keeps the formulas. And we go through that and we loop. We go through all the items and looking just for salary. All right, now that we've added salary, if any, we're ready to move on to overtime. All right, actually this is going to be for regular pay or salary. So we cover both regular and salary. Since they would not be generally in the same, we can put both of those in this. So I should say regular pay or salary. Both of these are covered here. And then of course, next up is overtime. I want to have overtime appear after. I don't want it to appear, I want it to appear if there's regular and overtime. I want regular always first, and I want overtime second. So that's why we run two different loops. First loop checks for salary and regular. The second loop checks for overtime. If there's overtime, it's going to put it after that. So I want it to appear second. So that's why we run the second loop. That's why. So this loop is exactly the same, except the difference is right here we are checking for overtime if the pay type equals overtime, and then do all of the exact same things we did. All right, so now we've covered salary, we've covered regular pay, we've covered salary pay, and we've covered overtime, and we put them all in. We've put them all in right here in the first table. So this table will continue. This is not here yet. Remember, this is not here yet. This is all brought over. So all of this is brought over. Now we're ready to move forward with our federal locals, right? We've covered all of our income. Now we're ready for our taxes. So let's see how we cover our taxes. First, we're going to add one payroll. We need to skip a row. So the report row equals report row plus one. That way you skip one, because I do want a blank row. I want a blank row separating these. So we want to skip the row, right? I want to skip a row. Once we're done with all the earnings, I want to skip one row and then go to federal and local tax deductions. Now we're ready to place. Now what I want to do is this. I want to take our named range here, of course it's called report range federal tax. I want to take that and I want to copy that right here into AA20. I'm going to copy that, or AA and the report row, whatever the report row is, and AA. So we can do that in the code. So the first thing we do is we copy the report range federal tax. That's the named range I just showed you. We're going to copy that. And in AA and whatever the report row is, we're going to paste it all. Paste everything, the formats, everything. Then I want to skip two rows. Report row equals report row plus two. Why do we skip two rows? Well, the first two rows cover the header, the main header, and then the subheader. So we need to skip two rows, and our first data is going to go here, two rows down. So if our current payroll row, if our current reports row is here, 1 and 2, now we're ready to start entering data right here. So now we can continue and run a new loop all the way in our payroll item list, run a new loop and look for tax items. Anything that says tax item, tax item, tax item, tax item, we're going to place that in the table, in our dynamic table. So we can do just that, looking for that. So we've skipped two rows. Now we're ready to run that loop once again, starting at 3, going to the last payroll item. Pay type, of course, we're going to set that's in P, and now we just check pay type. Is it a tax item? If it's a tax item, then do the following. AA, of course, is going to be the item name from Q. AD is going to be the amount. Everything else is formulas, so we can copy those formulas. Take that first row, wherever that first row is. Why is that? How do we know there's formulas there? Because they're in the range. They're inside that range. Let's take a look at that. Into the reports, they're right here, already here. They're already ready, right here. Year to date, that formula's already here. It's ready to be used based on whatever name is here. So as we move it, as we bring that, and I'll go over that formula if we get some time, but you can take a look at it. So when we copy this, right, all we need to do is copy this. I'll do it here, right click, copy, paste it here. And now all we have to do, now I just pasted it, now all we have to do is copy down the formulas like this, and you'll see based on the tax item here, it's automatically set because we have it. We have the formula already there. So we can, that's how we can build it dynamically, because we have the formulas in our original range. All right, so let's continue on with the code. So that's why we copy that row, and then we add a row, and then we paste it. Paste the formulas, paste the formats, and then clear the contents of just the values, not the formulas. AA through AD. Of course, AE is where our formula is, so we're only going to clear from AD. We just want to clear out those. That's all I want to do is just clear out. Basically, what I want to do is I want to say, okay, once we've copied it, I want to clear this out, but I definitely don't want to clear AE out. So AE stays, the formula stays. All right, so that's for tax deductions. Now we're done with tax. We run through that loop. Now we're ready for deductions. We're going to go the same thing. We're going to copy the range that we've set up on the right side. Report range of the deductions. And of course, we're going to paste that range in our row that's below that. We're going to add 2 rows for both of the headers. And then we're going to continue that loop one more time. But in this case, we're going to be looking for other deductions. We're going to add all of the other deductions, the formulas, the rules, everything is exactly the same. All we're going to do is we're going to run through that looking for every single other deduction item. All right, now that we have that, again, we're going to do one more thing, one more loop. We're going to take in other additions this time. This is the 5th loop. Now, of course, we're going to be looking for names like other additions. So when we go through our payroll item list here, we're looking for things like other addition, other addition, other addition. These 3 items would, of course, be added to that last table here. So we want that. We want that to appear, those 3 items. We want to put them down here so they get added. All right, next up, now we're done with our additions. What's the last thing we want to do? We want to place our summary. Our summary is right here. So now all I need to do is copy that summary and paste it right here, and just paste that summary right here. Of course, that summary already has the formulas we need. All we need to do is paste it down, and there you have it. Now we're ready for our report. Now all we need to do is take this entire report and paste it into our main section area. So let's take a look at how we do that. So we've covered other additions. We've done the same thing. We're ready. Now we've done everything. Now all we need to do is add the earnings summary range. Again, copy that range, place it in AA, paste special, paste all. And of course, that's the last time we're going to do any copying and pasting for this particular area. So we're just going to application cut copy mode equals false. Now what I need to do is I need to get the last report row data. Well, our last report range is going to be, our report row is right here. So I need to get the last row. If we know our last report row, right where we pasted it, right? In this case, it's 39. I know I need to know our last report row. That's important. So in this case, it's simply 39 plus 4. 43 is our last report row. So we just say our report row, our last report row is equal to our report row plus 4. 4 will get us our last row. I need to know that last row so that not only when I copy it over, but when I set the print range as well. So we need to get that last report row here, and we're going to set it up. All right, now in case there's no data, it's been skipped. All right, if the last report row equals 0, just in case, if we've skipped all of this, right, I need to set the last report row to at least something a minimum. So in this case, we're going to set it to 9. It just sets the last report row to 9, just in case there was no data. All right, now we're ready to set the report range. The report range can start in AA5 through AE in the last report row. AA5 is our header here, AA5, all the way to AE and our last report row, which is 43. So we've set that range, and now we're ready. Now I'm going to do is I'm going to take it and copy it. I'm going to bring it right over here into F5 and paste it right down. So let's go ahead and continue on to that. Into A5, we're going to copy that range with report range, and with range F5, we're going to paste everything, and paste the column widths. We want those column widths. Every particular report may have different column widths, so we always want to paste the column widths because when we have multiple reports, the column widths will differ. So we want to make sure to paste that. We're going to set B2 to false and F3 select just so we select it. That is how we run the macro. Now there's a couple really cool new tricks with conditional formatting I'd like to show you. Take a look at this. How is it that every particular table can automatically end with a big solid bottom border, but yet these tables are dynamic? How do we do that? For example, let's take a look at somebody with less data here. And you'll see here in this particular employee, she's got a little bit total, other deductions, just one row. You see our borders are always accurate. How do we do that with dynamic tables? We use conditional formatting. Let's take a look at the conditional formatting here, first of all, so we can see the rules, and then we can see how they're applied. Let's take a look at that. In actuality, let's go ahead and go to original data here. It is a large bottom border here. I've used the thicker border, but conditional formatting makes it. There's 2 rules that we're focused on. 2 rules. Let's go back to the original data so it's a little bit clearer to see because the columns are. All right, so what we've done here, let's just highlight this. We're going to focus on 2 rules. And let's go ahead and look at those rules. And there's multiple ones here because we've copied. I'm just going to select one row here. That's much easier. Conditional formatting, manage rules. Let's take a look at these 2 rules. All right, there's just 2 rules we're focused on. Basically, what I want to know is this. If there's no data, let's say there's no data, and there's no data here, I want to make sure there's no left and no right border. If there's data here, if there's no data, if there's data here and data here, color this line a thin blue line, thin. In actuality, if we look at it, let's right-click this. Let's format this. I want you to look at this. This is a solid. This is a larger border. Look, that's the larger border. And it's a larger border, but why is a smaller border showing up? Because we're using conditional formatting. Now, we don't have a choice. In conditional formatting, we can only put one border type. So when we look at these rules and we manage the rules and then we click on formatting, we take a look at this border, I don't have a choice between thick borders. Excel doesn't give us that. It only gives us a choice to add a thin border. So what I'm going to say is, okay, fine, I can only add a thin border, but I'm going to only add a thin border when two conditions are met. Two conditions. What are those conditions? That our current line has data and the line below has data. So F23 is not blank and F24 is not blank. When those two conditions, then put a thin border. Otherwise, maintain the thick border, the existing thick border. For example, let's take a look at this one. This one has data here in F24, but doesn't have any data in F25. So in this case, because of that rule, those rules, then we would say, okay, then use your original border, which is the thick border. That is how I've used those rules. So let's go ahead and conditional formatting. It's the same thing. Manage the rules, and it's the same rules. So here, if we look at this, we'll see F24 does not equal blank. That's correct. But F25 equals blank. So this rule wouldn't apply. So this way, this conditional formatting does not apply. So it must revert to its original solid border. Format the cells. Look, the original is solid. The original is solid on every single one of these, but they're not showing up because of the rules that we've placed in there. And let's take a look at this rule too. Let's take a look at the other rule to see why there's no borders here. Why there's no borders here. And we go into conditional formatting and we'll see our second rule is here. If F25 equals blank, then do what? Then clear out the left and the right border, the left and the right border. That's going to give us our effect that we have separate tables. Now, that's great and all, but look, but Randy, you said you're clearing all of this out, right? You said you cleared it. If you cleared it out, right, clear all, now we've got no conditional formatting here. How are we going to do that? Look, now there's nothing. Here's how we do it. We copy over the conditional formatting from our original data. So as soon as we select on a report, all of that conditional formatting gets replaced. Now the one important rule that you have to understand is our original data is in column F, right? We're focused on column F. So we need to use, when you're copying and pasting conditional formatting over, we need to use the original column. That's why the rules don't necessarily apply here. It does in most cases. I think it looks good. But here when we copy it, so let's take a look at the conditional formatting that I've added here. You'll see that I've used column F. Conditional formatting, manage rules. You'll see I've used formula for F. F is the important row because it's absolute. There's a $ below it. So that's why when we copy it over, the columns do not change. The columns do not change. The important thing, that's the first rule, that has to have your destination column in there. Your destination column must be there. And of course, our applies to, that doesn't matter because when that gets copied over, this gets changed automatically. So it's okay that we don't need to put our destination in the applies to because the applies to gets changed, right? The applies to gets changed, but our original formula does not change. So we need to make sure. But our rows can be, all we need to make sure is that our row in our formula matches the first row in the applies to. So you'll see that each time. For example, in this row here, we also maintain F, manage the rows, but you'll see that the F, the 21, the row changes. All we need to make sure is that the row applies the first row, 21 here, is also the first row, and make sure it's not absolute. When you edit that rule, you want to make sure that that row is not absolute. There's no $, so it covers every single row in our table. This way, when we copy and paste them down, it continues throughout. So that is how we do it. And of course, we have our totals here, and that's basically, again, sum if. If we sum if, we're going to based on the payroll item amount. Again, we're doing exactly the same thing that we did on the summary. We're going to be based on the payroll ID, which is in B9, our payroll item ID, right? Payroll item pay ID, and our employee ID. our pay ID is in B6, our employee ID is in B9, and of course, we're going to use the same rule, which is the dynamic pay that would include for every type of earnings. So we use those sum ifs throughout all of them, and that remains the same. We just have to make sure that, because we do copy them over, that those locations are absolute, so that we cover the dollar signs. So we need to make sure that B6 and B9 are always absolute, so that when they get copied over, they get changed. All right. I'm glad we got the covered. We've got one more thing to do, and that's to print. So our print is just a macro, but we also have the same macro here. Let's take a look at the print macro. And if we go down here onto our reports clear and print, we went over the reports clear is a simple macro that I run before any report gets created, and all that does is it clears our range from E5 to, that just clears our main section. It clears the entire range, it clears the formats, and it unlocks the cells just in case they get locked. So all that macro does is it takes this and it just clears it completely out and gets ready for the next report to run. It clears everything, formats and what have you. So we've got that covered. So that's the clear, and we run that when we select it. So when we look on the reports, here's the reports, right? And we see we have a selection change. Now I only have one report. If the user selects C6, do what? Do two things: run the clear reports and then run the macro that read. And so if we had other reports in C7, C8, C9, we'd do the same, but we'd add, this would be a different macro to run that specific report. All right, so we've got that. We've got the clear. One more macro I want to show you, or actually two more total. So let's go into that. Back into the clear and print. Now we want to print out. Remember you saw that button above the report, print out? That's just a simple macro. And all we're going to do is we're going to set the print range. We're going to determine the last row. I need to know what that last row is so that we can print it out. In this case, we're going to use column F99XLF. That's going to set the last row. Now we can determine the print range. We can set that print range from starting at F5, which is our first row, through J and the last row. And of course, we can set up our print area using the print page, and then of course we need the address of that. Now we're ready to print it out. All we have to do is print it out one. We're going to false, and you can run through these options. These are all specific printer options to collate number of copies, where you can honor the page setting, which we are. All right, so that's how to print out. There's one other one I wanted to show you, and that was in the payroll, and that's how we print all the stubs. Let's look into the payroll summary. Remember that button above, payroll stubs? Let's go over that real quick. Payroll, we had print pay stubs. I'm not going to click it here. It's going to print all of these. But basically what it's going to do here is going to run through all of the employees. In fact, if we selected the payroll, I think this payroll, they all have a lot of employees. We're not going to. All right, so basically it's going to run through a loop. It's going to run through every one of these employees. It's going to take the employee ID and the employee information. It's going to take the payroll ID, and it's going to put that information. It's going to put the employee name right here. It's going to put the payroll right here, and then it's going to run that macro. It's going to print that report. Then it's going to go to the next one. So that's all we do. We set the last employee. I need to know what the last employee is on the payroll. First of all, I want to say, are you sure you want to print out? Just in case maybe they click it by accident. It's a kind of, if you have 100 employees, you don't want to do it unless you're sure. So we just have a message box to make sure the user is sure that they want to do that. We also want to make sure that it's confirmed. We want to make sure that the payroll, we don't want them printing pay stubs unless the payroll is actually confirmed. So we do need to check that as well. If it's not been confirmed, then we say, please confirm this payroll before printing the pay stubs, and then exit. Okay, assuming those conditions are accurate, we can then set the last employee row, and that's going to be BC99. And we need to set the last row, and in the payroll screen, you can see BC is going to be using BC. I want to know the last one. In this case, it's 19, so we can run our loop from 9 all the way down and run that loop. And next up, we're going to say if it's less than 9 and exit the sub. We need to make sure that we actually have employees that are going to be paid. Next up, sheet 15, going to clear contents. That's our employee in the reports. And, okay, so we can put in F3, sheet F3 equals BK. What is that? That sets the payroll in the payroll screen. That sets BK3 is our payroll. Let's take a look at that. BK3 is our payroll. Right? I want to take this payroll and I want to put it right in here in our reports. I want to put it right there. And the next up, I want to put the employee right there. So that's what we're going to do, just like that. All right, next up, we're going to say we're going to activate the reports. I want to activate that sheet, and then I want to run, and then I'm ready for the loop from 9 to the last employee row. For each row, H4 is our employee name. We're going to set BD in the employee row. BD in the employee row is the name. So as we go through each one, BD is here, here, here. We get that employee name, each one, and we put it right here. And as soon as we change it, as soon as we change it, the report's going to automatically run. So we don't need to run the macro. We just need to place the employee there, and it's going to run automatically. This employee has no data, of course, so that's why nothing appeared. But if they have data, of course, it'll appear. But in case, there we go, this one has some data. So if there's no data, then it'll appear. And so that's how we do it. So we just have to change the employee and the macro will run automatically. So all we have to do is, as soon as we add something to H4, it's going to run. The next thing I want to do is run the macro printout and then go to the next. That's our loop. That is our loop. Let's go ahead and put it out there. So we just do that for every employee. That is it. That is how we do payroll stubs. I know I kind of moved quickly, but we got a lot to cover. We have a formula here as well. All of this is it adds a title and sets up the absolute for H4, which is the employee name, allows us to bring both the to and from dates. To date is in H3, from dates in J3. And of course, we're going to format those dates. And in fact, if your dates are formatting, you may want to format these dates differently. You could just change the text to format them. And that's pretty much it. I'm so glad you did. Remember, if you like this, you are going to love the dashboard course. So please, I'll include the link below. I would love for you to join us. Hundreds and hundreds of students are loving this course, and you will too. So please join us. There's tons of great bonuses there. Some amazing 15+ hour masterclass on these dashboards. You're going to learn tons of features. So please be sure and check that out. Again, thanks so much for joining me. I appreciate your shares. Leave your comments below. I respond to every single comment, and it's just me, nobody doing it. So I'll be sure to get your questions answered. Thank you so much. Your shares and likes always appreciated. Have a great day.